Antipodes, Chapter 14. Jigsaw's eyes opened. He blinked almost at once at the harsh, fluorescent light that was illuminating the room. He rolled off the cot and stood up, blinking the sleep out of his eyes. The door to the bathroom opened, and Tiptoe cantered out. Upon seeing Jigsaw standing at the door of his cot, she smiled.
"Oh, you're finally awake,"
she said.
"You stayed up so late with the terminal that I thought it would be better to let you sleep. I've been up for a few hours already. I left you your breakfast on my cot."
She gestured towards the cot with her head, where a small meal was sitting on a metal tray.
"Oh, thanks, Celestia,"
Jigsaw said.
"I'm starving."
He walked over to the tray and sat on the bed. His horn began to glow with a faint blue aura as the food floated to his mouth. Tiptoe trotted over and sat next to him.
"So,"
Jigsaw asked, in between bites of salad.
"what's on the agenda for today? Did you get any news from Incendia?" "Yeah, she told me to bring you back to the main chamber once you'd woken up and finished eating." "Did she say what for?"
Jigsaw asked.
"No.
Tiptoe said.
She said we should both be there."
Jigsaw finished off the salad and stood up.
"Well, I suppose we ought to go then."
Together, they set off down the hallway. Jigsaw wondered for a moment how they would find their way to the main chamber after all the twists and turns it had taken to get to their room. But at the first fork in the hallway, Jigsaw noticed a small strip of lights along the ceiling had been illuminated. He assumed that they led to the main chamber and followed them. He was right. After several minutes of following the twisting corridor, they entered back into the large, domed chamber. Incendia was seated at one side of a large table in the center of the room. Above her, a large holographic image of the familiar sun and moon insignia blazed, illuminating the room with a warm glow. Incendia looked up as they crossed the threshold. And smiled.
"I'm glad you're up. We have a lot of work to do,"
she said. She got up from the table and walked around it. Jigsaw was shocked to see that her leg was unbandaged and appeared to support her weight. Incendia noticed Jigsaw's stare.
"Medical technology has come pretty far in the last few thousand years. Broken leg won't put you out of commission for long if you have the supplies."
Jigsaw nodded appreciatively.
"That's good to know."
Incendia smiled and said,
"Now, we do have some business to attend to. We have to use the teleporter, so brace yourselves. We're going to take a little tour of the city near the outskirts so you can see just how bad things are."
Jigsaw and Tiptoe nodded in acknowledgement. They gritted their teeth as Incendia hit the button on the teleporter. They began the now familiar process of being tossed from side to side, though it seemed less intense than it had before. With a jarring jolt, the world solidified, and they were standing in a very small, very run-down shack that seemed to be made out of plastic sheets. It was barely large enough for the three of them to fit in.
"Just follow me and don't say anything,"
Incendia instructed. She led them out of the shack and onto a rough dirt street. Jigsaw and Tiptoe almost gasped in shock at what they saw. Stretching out before them were row after row of the same shabby buildings they had just come out of. Extremely downtrodden and emaciated ponies wandered around on the narrow dirt street. None of the sleek, shiny vehicles could be seen here. Tall smokestacks in the distance belched black smoke, most of which blew mercifully out of the shimmering dome, but what didn't settled near the ground level and made the air smell sooty and thick. Far off, Rubidium's tower could be seen rising ominously out of the center of the city, surrounded by the much smaller peaks of the other towers. Incendia began walking directly away from the tower. They reluctantly followed her. Tiptoe couldn't help but notice the other ponies' reactions to Incendia. They would glance up and see the teleporter embedded in her shoulder, and their eyes would grow wide. Some were expressions of joy, others of fear. On most, it was a mix of both. They would retreat into shacks or side streets on her approach. Within moments, the entire street was clear. Incendia didn't walk like the other ponies, either. She held her head high and walked quickly. She didn't show any signs of the limp from the previous day. They were rapidly approaching the edge of the city. After only a few minutes of walking, they reached it. The shimmering blue barrier terminated just ahead of them. The blue light that shone off of it seemed to drown out all of the other colors of the city. Even Incendia's fiery mane seemed to lose its luster under the blue light. Incendia's horn glowed a bright reddish-orange hue, and a small rock lifted off the ground. She tossed it through the shield. As soon as it made contact, there was a flash of light and a concussive burst of air that nearly destabilized Tiptoe. On the other side of the glittering wall of light was a small pile of ash. Incendia began to speak.
You've already seen the inner city, where those with the money live. The rest of the ponies are forced out here into the slums. The barrier protects, yes, but anything that comes into contact with it will be instantly destroyed. The ponies living here have to deal with the constant possibility of death because of something as simple as a misstep. Not to mention, this is Rubidium's prime feeding grounds. No pony will notice if a pony goes missing in the dead of night from here. It's awful and it's wrong, and it's what we are sworn to fight for.
As she spoke, smoke began to coil off her coat and into the air around her. Jigsaw and Tiptoe subconsciously backed away from her and the barrier a few feet. When Incendia finished, Tiptoe spoke up.
That is awful. I can't imagine having to live like that,
she said quietly. The smoke rising from Incendia's coat stopped, and she seemed to slacken a little.
Come on, I have something else to show you.
It was then that the lights of the city flickered out, and the glittering shield disappeared. Rubidium wiped the blood off his horn, leaving trails of red on the white walls of the attenuator's chamber. The attenuator's body lay slumped on the table, still strapped onto it. The wound in her chest was still fresh. There was a flash of green lighting on the horizon, and the ground rumbled and shook. Rubidium smiled.
Won't be long now.